Hello and welcome to Holy Harlot. This is the sanctuary for the untamed and sacred. I'm Lisa Emery, your guide into the realms of embodied pleasure, divine feminine power, and the magic of full-bodied soul liberation. This is where we dismantle shame, reclaim desire as sacred, and awaken the codes of pleasure that have always been yours. If you're ready to shed your stress conditioning, activate your body as a portal, and step into your full magnetism, welcome in. Don't forget to support these ad-free videos by joining this channel as a member. I would greatly appreciate your support. And if you're ready for your own personal Holy Harlot awakening, comment Holy Harlot in the video comment section, and I will send you more information about it. I am so excited to welcome in Nina Bajković. She is a transactional analysis counselor, psychotherapist, and has a successfully running practice for 6 years. She's the founder of NB Psychotherapy, host of Moving Forward events in Montenegro that meets one time a year, bringing eminent speakers and specialists to talk about what society considers taboo. Welcome in, Nina. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Beautiful intro for Holy Harlot.
Thank
Oh,
you.
gets me.
Yes, that's both of us.
Yeah, makes two of us.
Yes. So today we're going to be talking about shame and pleasure. And this is your, maybe not holy grail, but this is how I see your work. You help dismantle that. And so can you help explain what is shame and how it develops?
Yeah, thank you for asking though. When I just want to go one step back. So when people usually ask me about shame, what they're referring to is toxic shame. And there is such a thing as healthy shame. And I think it's very important to differentiate between the two so we don't demonize it as much as we do. So we understand that there is an actual use of it if used right and if internalized adequately. So shame comes into the scene at age around 2. So during those terrible twos, as they usually call it, which I disagree totally with, but that's another story. So it comes around that time in child's life, usually when they're practicing their autonomy, they're starting to figure out that there is autonomy, that they're separate. And shame is used as a regulatory sign, usually in the form of embarrassment when we're talking about kids. So it has very practical and useful form. So if you think about developmental phase or stage that we're talking about, and if you think about what's happening during that time, what's happening is that children learn that they can be separate. Children learn that there are some boundaries, and children also learn that their behavior can affect others. So if done right during parenting, what we essentially learned or help them learn during that period is we learn them empathy, we learn them social connection, we help them learn accountability, and essentially forming their moral norms during their life later on. So when you think about it, it's very, very useful things that they're learning here. Now, how does this all play out in actual life, and how do we get to that healthy shame versus toxic shame? So if a parent or a caretaker, for the sake of interview, we'll all call them parents. So if a parent acknowledges autonomy of a child on one side, adequately sets boundaries on the other, and it's emotionally attuned to their child, aka fulfilling their emotional needs, the child is probably going to internalize the message, I can be separate and be loved, even though if I mess up sometimes and feel a bit embarrassed about it.
Okay.
Or if parent is over focused on calling child names and commenting on their being more so than commenting what they're doing. So they're commenting their self, not their behavior, by calling names or however. And plus not emotionally attuning to that child once they're in distress, or just generally not emotionally attuning to them. child is likely to internalize the message, I am bad. There is innately something wrong with me. So let me just, so this all makes sense, let me just give you an actual example of it. So if you have a toddler that is sitting on a chair and it's keep dropping the fork, they're in that phase where they drop things. And you pick that fork up and you tell them, honey, I see that you're having fun, but I don't allow you to drop that fork. Forks belong on table. And the child keeps dropping it as they usually do. So you tell them, if you continue doing that, I'm going to take it away. So you give them a warning. They are 100% going to, keep dropping it. And then once you take them away, they start screaming bloody murder, right? So when they do that, you hug them and offer them emotional support or whatever it's your way of tuning into a child, but fulfilling their emotional need at that time because they are in distress. So you co-regulate them. That child is going to internalize that first message that we talked about. So they're going to have the idea of I can make mistakes and still be accepted. As opposed to if a parent, if the child keep dropping that fork and they say to them, you're so clumsy, you're so bad for doing that, give me that. And they take it away from them. And then when child starts crying, they send them to a timeout, which is probably one of the most damaging things that you can do in that time for the child. They send them to a timeout so they regulate. Why am I air quoting? Because kids cannot regulate. They need to co-regulate with us. They are going to internalize the message that they're bad. There's something wrong with them. Otherwise, mommy wouldn't behave like this. And that whole situation, especially name calling, it's really the birth of that toxic shame that we all talk about. Now, it's very important to understand if you do this once or twice, it's not going to make that damage. But if you do a majority of time, that's probably what's gonna happen. So I guess maybe the easiest way to differentiate between the two is that healthy shame is temporary.
Okay.
It's a sign that we might have crossed some boundary or violated some social norm and that we need to make amends or however you call it. And toxic shame is this chronic state of inherent sense of I'm unworthy. I am not valued. I'm not lovable. I'm separate. I don't belong. And I mean, I think that's the best way to explain the difference between the two. So this is what I did. I did something bad, and this is I am bad.
Yeah. Very, very different. And I want to point out a few really important pieces that you gave us just now is that it's okay to have shame because it means we crossed a boundary, but the
Yeah,
parent needs to help co-regulate because the child will not be able to differentiate between I did something bad and I am bad.
exactly. Because the phase is about learning that you're separate. So
Okay.
they're still in the phase thinking that they are a reflection of you and you're a reflection of them.
Yeah. So they need that
Yeah.
support. And the next thing that you said hit so hard and it like mushroomed all these ideas inside my head. This toxic shame, right? That like festers, starts super young, like you just pointed out, and it leads to this inherent feeling of I am unworthy. That is the most common sentiment among
Yes.
adults
Yes.
for
Yes.
some reason. And so many of us don't understand where that came from.
Yeah. Yeah. Usually, I mean, there are tons of things where it can come from, but parenting really has a great effect on it. The
Right,
way how you talk to your child, the way how you set the boundary, the way how much they can rely on you helping them co-regulate.
right.
And I mean, stuff like it really it plays a great role. And I think that when we talk about shame and how clients show up with that shame, I wouldn't necessarily say it's, clients, it's all of us.
Yeah,
It's, I think 100% of us.
yeah.
at least millennials. Let's
Yeah.
leave it at that. It really is present in every one of us. So yeah, I'm hoping we are coming out of this dark age of parenting with
Yeah.
kind of slight adjustments. Yeah.
And I think from here, we're going to talk more about that and how, if you grew up that way, or you have this idea that I am unworthy, how you can, even at this point in time, no matter how old you are, move through that.
Oh yeah, you can move through it 100%. Just need to acknowledge it first.
When we learn about shame from childhood, whether or not we are bad or whether or not we did something bad, and we use that to form the moral compass that you're talking about. So, how do you see that playing out in adulthood, specifically for women, but obviously kind of with men as well?
Well, when it was a good question before, like how do you know that do your clients know that it's shame they're talking about? And the answer is no.
Mm,
They usually come in and because shame is there is a Brene Brown actually says that there is a silent epidemic of shame. And I do really feel that, not just feel, but witness every day that we live in a society that really shames everything from the motherhood to, I don't know, body shaming, everything.
yeah.
It's really in every region of our lives. Going back to the clients. So when they come into therapy, they don't come in and say, listen, Nina, I have some issues with my shame, so I'd like to work on that. It usually sounds like, I don't know what's wrong with me. I have everything laid out for me. I have the marriage and I have kids and I have a car and a house and a paycheck that I'm happy with. I just don't feel happy. There is something in me that, doesn't let me sleep at night. Or it sounds like I have this terrible imposter syndrome that I can't shake off. It's blocking me doing half of the things that I wanted to do. And in most cases, such cases, really shame plays, it's not the only role, but really plays a major role in it. And I wouldn't necessarily reserve that only for clients. We have it.
Yeah.
We have it every day. We deal with it. Yeah, we deal it with every day. I'm a trained professional. I deal with it still. So yeah, it's reserved for everybody, I guess.
Yeah.
Not the big thing, but yeah, it's reserved for everybody.
Well, I like that you pointed out that it's really, people aren't really super aware that what they're dealing with is shame, and it comes up in so many different ways, such as blocking you from like baseline happiness, right?
Yeah.
Or seeking out the things that you think would please you more, but there's so much shame around it that you're trying to stay in one kind of paradigm, such as mother, such as wife or worker. And so I guess, can you speak a little bit more about the connection between the subconscious mind and the psychological limitations around the body, especially when it comes to kind of the erotic blueprint? Like how are women blocking themselves with shame? What's that connection like?
Take your pick. Um, Unfortunately, but yeah, I mean, this is where things get a little bit more complex. So when we talk about erotic blueprint by itself, in spite of many beliefs, erotic creation of erotic blueprint is not separate from psychological development.
Okay.
It goes hand in hand with it. And it starts as early as a 4 year of age when children start naturally exploring their bodies, giving themselves pleasure in a certain way, and then it continues in early teenage years through the adulthood and then the end of life. But the messages, that's what we oversee. The messages that we receive during that time around our body, around touch, around desire, around other people's body, around masculine or feminine or boy or a girl, they're very important and they play maybe the major role in actually having those psychological limitations or not. There is such a thing in transactional analysis, a concept that we call script. So script is unconscious plan that we make based on the messages that we receive and internalize around ourselves, around others, actually about ourselves, about others, and about the world. And these messages, when internalized in inadequate way, reluctant to use pathologically word, but let's, for the sake of understanding, in a pathological way, we call them injunctions.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Yeah, what
So
does that
if
mean?
you, yeah, yeah, that was an intro. Now I'll explain. So when you have a girl, a 13-year-old girl who starts developing physically and she starts growing breasts, and there is mom on one side who's trying to ignore that, like it's not happening. And when she sees it cannot be unseen anymore, she tells her, you need to cover up, you be careful around boys now. And that attitude with fear, with am I triggering you?
No, it's there's so much popping up. I'm
Yeah,
here for
okay.
it.
Okay. So when you have that kind of an attitude, and then on the other side, for example, you have a dad doesn't want to spend time with her anymore because she triggers him in a way that she's not his little girl anymore. Now she's this kind of woman, some kind of a woman, and he doesn't want to hug her anymore, or he doesn't want her to sit in his lap anymore. She's creating injunction. Now we are connecting with previous part that it's called don't be sexual. Those injunctions, there are tons of them. We're not going to go through all of them, but that injunction is actually so powerful that can be seen in psychological limitations, like thought patterns, things that we are aware or not aware, or things like that, and also in a physiological way. So you would see girls go like this, bring their shoulders
The
up.
hunch.
Yeah, I didn't know the name of it. So they would hide their breasts. They would be dressing that way, not showing any sign of femininity, let alone sexuality.
Because
They
it's
will,
bad at that point, right?
yes, it's bad. It wasn't supported by parents adequately. It wasn't, let's talk about this. Let me see. I see. Do you feel any better? Do you feel comfortable? Do you see new attention that you're getting? How do you feel about it?
Right.
Healthy attitude around development that needs to be supported because she's going through that for the first time.
Right.
It's not like she's been through that for 10 times now she knows what to do with it. It's the first time she's growing her breasts, right?
Yeah.
If it's not supported in a healthy way, then it's usually with these kind of messages. And I don't know how is it. I mean, I have an idea how is it in States, but Balkans are flooded with that narrative around it
Right.
from really both parents.
Like
So
hide yourself because I'm uncomfortable and I don't know how to deal with it.
I don't know what to do with you.
Mm.
That's usually basically all parenting is about that. You are transferring to your children what you're uncomfortable to deal with within
Yeah.
yourself. That's basically it. So going back to injunction, those injunction can be so powerful that there would be children or little girls that would underdevelop. So physiology would actually react to psychological limitations
Right.
and all
'Cause
the
they're like releasing all these chemical cocktails that are listening to the brain, being like, please stay small, or this is gross.
yeah. So when you see, I mean, this is totally it can be very inappropriate to say this in a specialist way, but for the sake of argument and understanding, when you see a 33-year-old walking in the office and you see it completely this androgynous body, you would questioning that period of life.
I see.
That would that'd
Yeah.
be a yeah.
Because it's like this idea of maybe it comes from the pathology of having to hide.
Yes, maybe it doesn't have to do anything with it.
Right. But you want to explore it.
Yeah, but it is a cue. Go there and look at it. Of course, if the client wants to, if you have agreement with it, if that's the reason they came to therapy, you don't go in. I think that you should be talking about. You need your client's consent, but it would be a cue to look at it if adequate and if the client wants to explore it.
Yeah, well,
So
it's got a
yeah.
little story going on in my brain if I can share with you. Yeah. So when I was around like 5 and 6, my mom used to like sew my dresses. She was very cute. And I stopped wearing dresses. I remember like it was Christmas and I'm 6 years old and my parents are like begging me, please wear a dress for Christmas. Like we're going to take a card. And I absolutely could not. And I'm looking back now being like, it was this abuse moment by a person outside the family that little Mary Lisa was like, I can't wear dresses anymore. Like I was wearing all boys' clothes at that point. And going back to like thank you for mentioning that it's natural for children to explore their bodies in a pleasured way, because I remember having this situation with a close friend where we were exploring ourselves like around age 7, and her mom found us and like barred me from ever seeing her again.
Yeah.
Like all of
That
this
is
messaging is really, I'm sure, still lives in the body and has come out in such weird ways.
Thank you for sharing, though. The first thing that you mentioned around not wearing dress, that sounds pretty much as a defensive mechanism because we are wired to learn to know how to survive,
Yeah.
So you knew you shouldn't wear dresses.
Yeah.
On a different note, the thing that you mentioned now, that is unfortunately so common that most of parents don't know what to do with their children at that time. And I totally understand that. But what happens in the meantime, if they're ostracizing them. Like that's bad. You're bad. You're not
I felt
supposed to do
so ashamed. Yeah.
that was my point. So once you do that, you internalize the sense of shame around that thing that you were caught but never explained what was happening.
Yeah.
That's that part that we talk about from the very beginning. And so setting a boundary, it would be adequate to set a boundary there.
Right.
Like, girls, see what you're doing. I see that it's giving you pleasure. You can do this here and there. If, for example, if it was in a public place, and that would require adequate boundary, but you would not infuse shame and communicate verbally and unverbally that that's bad what you're doing and that you're bad for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's really powerful. I feel like talking to you, I'm in a therapy session right now. It's so interesting. And I know that there's a lot of moms that watch this. And I kind of just like want to like reach through the screen and pat them on the back. Like this is all to support you so that you know how to handle the things that are going on with your young children so that we can break the cycle of toxic shame, right? Through just talking about it, confronting it.
And that's true. And for everybody who's listening who already made a mistake, it's correctable.
Yeah.
There is never a time where you look past it and say, okay, that's done. You can't be changed. Yeah, even if you have adult children, it can be corrected.
Wow. Yeah, that's really powerful. I totally agree with that. There's no past point, right? There's always the point now to like solve and dissolve.
Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing that.
Oh, true. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that you had to do a lot of that work kind of yourself. And now you
Oh,
have a young daughter.
yes, yes, yes. And I'm triggered all over the place.
But you show up. That's the point. You
Yes,
show
I
up.
do. I really do. I really do show up. I try my best and I see results, and that's my reward. Yay me.
Okay. I've got another question for you. What do you notice is really the way of most women fully claiming their pleasure? Is it psychological conditioning, nervous system patterns, ancestral trauma, or something else? Like, is it benefiting them the way they're claiming their pleasure, or are they doing it in a way that kind of blocks them?
Well, it's all of the above.
Okay.
It's all so psychological conditioning and nervous system patterning, and I mean all of it stands on the way of reclaiming pleasure. Also, I would add two more things that I see very important. Was that your question though? What is standing in a way?
Yeah, I guess my question is like when you notice people even in like your groups, not just like the practice that you have. Like, I feel like we have so much weight and constriction and shame, right, around pleasure seeking. How do you notice that we're tending to block ourselves? And how
Well,
does it come out sideways?
just ask anyone around you. Do you feel pleasure most of your week?
Nope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, most of the time we are either in a fight flight or in such, pattern that it's enabling us to stop and look ourselves in the mirror, let alone feel pleasure. But there is a good reason for this. We really need to acknowledge the progress that we are making. I'm not saying it's ideal now, it's far from it. But if you consider neurological patterning, psychological conditioning, if you consider these two things that I wanted to mention, which is transgenerational trauma around sexuality,
Yeah.
social conditioning, it's like, how do I find my way through this? For example, transgenerational trauma plays a big role in that that is standing in the way of women finding pleasure. There's this, at least I am positive to talk about this part of the world, and confident to talk about it. There is this how would I call it? Like the inherent vow of not expressing sexuality in any
Yeah.
way.
I would say
So
it's similar here. We've puritanized a lot of sexuality. Like God
yeah,
is watching.
yeah. By the yeah. So many wrong things with that, but let's make another interview about that.
Yeah.
So this inherent vow of not speaking about it, it's modeling to generations and generations and generation. Don't talk about this. This is not in existence. I don't know how you got here. We didn't make you. We don't have sex. It's very hidden behind the layers and layers of shame, of silence, of maybe not knowing what to do with it, not knowing how to talk about. But it really has that effect where you basically model with your behavior to next generation, don't talk about it. It's not important. Whereas it is a pillar of our one of the pillars of our growing ups. And also I wanted to mention this. So that's one way of generational trauma standing in a way of a pleasure. And the other one that it's very important, again, I'm speaking about this part of the world, is that if you would ask, honestly, of course, you're not going to get that answer ever, but if you would have to have your grandmother or her mother to tell you honestly, how many times have they encountered marital rape? I think a lot of things would get clearer
I
because
don't
they,
even think people, especially older generations, know that that's like a possibility sometimes.
yeah, they 100% didn't know that that they had possibility to say no. That's how strong social impact around it was. So, and that leaves trace in epigenetics.
Totally.
We
Like that's in our bioluminescence. We pass that on
we pass it
chemically.
on. Yeah, I mean, by now we all know that what we don't deal with get transferred to our children. And when they say that, they usually mean about modeling behavior and stuff like that. But also it gets passed by epigenetics, by the
Yes.
expressions of our genes. If you encounter marital rape, for example, for entire marriage, and you never talked about it and you never resolved it, of course that if you had daughter or a son, it's going to be expressed in them in a certain way. So that it's, I mean, as deeper we go, we see how complex story around pleasure is and
Right.
shame.
Yeah.
It's not that, why don't you just wake up in the morning and say five affirmation and just, no, be, off your way, happy. There is layer upon layer
Yeah.
upon,
We're working against conditioning from our
yeah,
current culture and status. We're working against the epigenetics that passed along information. And we're
yeah,
working against our own bodily, like the messages that it's carried from our experiences. And I feel like what you're talking about, this constant construct of like, please don't talk about it. I can't deal with it. I don't know how to deal with it. Keep it quiet. It creates a culture of subversive violence, men and women, self-imposed and against others. Like when something's taboo, like you talk about a lot at your kind of gatherings with the professionals, is like whatever's taboo gets made into kind of violence sometimes.
Yeah, and also we are quick to find ways how to explain it. There is a difference between explaining and approving. It's okay to explain it, but it's not okay to approve it. We're very quick to especially pathologically. So this is what happens. We were at war 20 years ago, and this, left this imprint on that generation, and we're all quick to explain it, and that's good. And it's very useful. But what I feel missing is acting upon that. Okay, so now we understood it. Don't approve it. Let's just do something about it. Because people tend to, can't remember the word in English, but tend to over explain their
Rationalize.
yes, rationalize what previous generation did, again, because they have an issue with dealing with
It's
it.
a defense over rationalizing. Yeah.
Yes. And
And
also, a very important thing to mention, how would we call it, conditioning. There was that video a couple of years ago. I don't know if you remember. I think Cynthia Nixon posted. It's called "Be a Lady" or something. It really spoke about. Check it out, please,
okay.
if you because it really speaks about that dual messaging that we get. Be sexy, but don't be too much sexy. Reveal in a certain way, but don't reveal too much. Enjoy sex with me, but God forbid you enjoyed it with somebody else.
Right.
Be successful, but be also an extremely good mother. So it's these messages, dual messaging that we get from society. They're very shaming, by the way. It's also driving us in this direction of trying to reach perfection that is impossible to reach, and just staying in that loop of suffering
Yeah.
where we are shamed and try to receive perfection, and we want to learn pleasure, whereas we then learn how to perform pleasure out of shame that we don't feel.
Right. Oh my gosh, there's so much in that last sentence that you talked about, but like when you made that loop of like we're shamed into trying to be perfect and it creates this circle. I really saw inside that circle like people pleasing and
Yes.
perfectionism, and
Yeah,
women have become so performative in pleasure that they have to numb out their bodies in order to stay in that circle.
exactly. Exactly. We perform because we are ashamed that we don't feel pleasure.
Yeah.
So because we want to please, again, that's another story. Because we want to please, then we please we perform our pleasure even for them, not tuning in to our body whatsoever. So, and also one thing that really, when I was thinking about this interview, it like kind of sentence got in my brain. Throughout history, even today, women were always object of desire. They were never considered to be subject of their own desire.
Goosebumps.
Yeah.
Well, especially in the past 1,000 years of this construct of the patriarchal society, right? And it's like you are meant to, you're right, an object of desire. Like we don't get to seek the desire. We're never taught about female orgasms. Like they only just learned what squirting is, like from the female body, but it's been going on for millennia.
Yeah.
It's wild. Yeah.
And as a result, then we have disembodied relationship with our own body, if that's even sentence. We have a
Yeah.
disembodied view on our body, and we are completely cut off from pleasure.
And I feel like the constant numbness, like if the numbness just piles up so that we can keep performing, this is where a lot of disharmony and illness comes into the female hardware. Painful periods,
Know that how
hysterectomy.
many women don't know that periods are not supposed to be as painful?
Say it louder for the people in the back, Nina.
Yeah. Yeah, no, seriously, like the ovaries, how do you say it in English? Poly something, when your ovaries are in a position that it's harder for you to get pregnant. I don't know the name in English, how they're called. It's all connected. It's not, that's not like I just have them,
Yeah.
you know, why you have them.
And
That
I want to put
super,
a pin in this real quick because as a female, I've also had a lot of, issues with my own feminine hardware that I've needed to examine and resolve with doctors. And there is no shame or blame in the energy patterns that are trapped within anyone. This is all to like help you understand that like solving your emotional, your generational issues can liberate things that you thought were medically stuck.
yes. And the only thing that we aim here is to give out as many information as we can. So for people to at least be informed in a sense and maybe themselves ask question why. No shaming in it whatsoever. We all
Yeah.
had an experience with it and still continue to deal with it. But at least it's easier when you're not in the dark. It's really
So
easier.
true. So
Yeah.
true. And there is a path out.
Yes, there is
Ah,
always.
yes, there is. Okay, so how do you think that pleasure work can support the rewiring of the limiting beliefs and patterns within the kind of psychological construct of a person?
That's a very good question. And I was actually new to this myself. By new, I mean a couple of years ago. But pleasure actually, by performing pleasure, your body is releasing oxytocin and it's releasing endorphins. And those are all hormones that actually prevent relaxation, even pain relief. You have the connection. You can bond easily with person. So it actually calms down your nervous system. It calms down your fight or flight or freeze that may be active. And it activates parasympathetic rest and digest. Like that, it calms down the fight or flight. So actually pleasure and experiencing embodied pleasure actually can really be a medicine to a body with a complete and entire truth to it. So it can really be a medicine. And it's I mean it's really almost magical how biology and how learning things like pleasure can actually get us where we want to be in life, whatever that is. Maybe it can be just a state of happiness
Right.
or state of calmness or whatever it is that we are aiming for. But pleasure can really serve us as medicine. And what I would say around pleasure also that I've seen in my clients and in myself, once a person, whether it's a woman or a man, but we're mostly talking about women here now, when you embody pleasure, you embody a certain way of empowerment.
Can you say more about what you mean embody pleasure?
When you start practicing when you cultivate pleasure on a daily basis, whatever that is for you, it's a cup of coffee or a walk, or it doesn't have to be sexually. I mean, it
Yes.
can be sexually, but whatever gives you pleasure. I mean, first of all, you need to detangle what it is that gives you pleasure.
Right.
That's before, but once you do that, just cultivating pleasure, you are choosing yourself each day first. So when you do that, it really helps. That was my experience with my client. Create that identity of that autonomous, sensual person that claims her body and claims her pleasure. So those two aspects, as pleasure, encountering pleasure every day, actually creates biochemical processes in you that can heal you. With that empowerment on psychological level, really gives you a completely another insight in life from that point on. Because what's happening, for example, when you empower yourself with by claiming your pleasure, you're actually giving yourself, as we call in TA, a correcting experience, where you dissolve those injunctions that we spoke about earlier, and give yourself a corrective experience where you give yourself permission to enjoy.
And it doesn't even have to be connected, right? You don't have to be thinking about the injunction or the past emotional
You don't need to
injury.
know anything about it. I'm just explaining it for
Right,
the sake of explanation. You don't need to know anything about it. I'm just explaining the process in behind. So
right.
once you empower that inside of you, when you claim your sensuality, when you actively cultivate pleasure in your everyday life, it gives you psychologically that, as we call it, corrective experience. Whereas when you were told to don't enjoy, because this or that, which is an injunction, you somehow enjoy, and it's not this or that. It's this completely other thing that it's very pleasurable.
Right.
So you give yourself a correcting experience, you dilute those injunction, and you give yourself permission to change your software setting
Right.
from that one to another one.
Yeah, and these micro decisions, and that's what it is. Like we're talking about the actual you have to decide that pleasure isn't something as big as having an orgasm or mind-blowing sex. It's really just like, can I sit with my coffee and listen to the birds? Like if we can just make pleasure a lot more accessible in people's minds, right? Then they can start making those micro decisions, which end up solving and dissolving a lot of those imprints that they've been carrying since childhood, since, pre-generations.
Yeah. And what helped me into getting to where you just explained people get to is that erotica doesn't necessarily mean sex. Erotica is included in sex. Eroticism actually means aliveness.
Yes.
How much of us we allow ourselves to feel.
Yeah. Major
So
steps.
yeah. So it's not that, it's aliveness, the pleasure and erotica and all that, it's an aliveness. It's not in just in sex. That's included, but it's not the main subject.
That's so, so powerful. It's about how alive you're allowing yourself to be. And if we have all of these injunctions, all of these memories, all of these constructs that just make us smaller and smaller and more numb and more in pain, then all we need to do is start asking myself, what can I do in this little moment to feel just a little bit more alive?
Yeah, yeah.
And start pulling away the curtain.
Yes, yes. And very important thing into that explanation of erotica, so it's aliveness, and it's how much you yourself let yourself feel. Why am I saying this? Because there is a certain amount of accountability there that we need to be held on to.
Absolutely.
Because being how do you say it? Rewired to pleasure again. It's a very conscious process.
Yeah.
It's not something you're just gonna, I'm learning about this and it's gonna happen. You have to do the work, like basically. Maybe it's counterintuitive, but you need to understand things, what that gives you pleasure,
Yeah.
sexual or otherwise. You need to go through them. You need to make the time to actually experience them.
Yeah.
Then that biochemical things can be happening, and then there's a creation of identity around it. So
Right.
it's a very conscious.
So would you
Right.
say one of my favorite topics and one of my biggest triggers is victimhood mentality? And so it sounds like what you're saying is this decision that we all need to make, like I decide that I
Yeah.
now need to be the pleasure researcher. I decide that I need to put in the effort to look for these
Yeah.
things and develop them. No one's gonna save us. No one's gonna
Yeah.
swoop in and be like, here's all this pleasure. We
Yeah.
have to make those decisions and behaviors.
Yes, yes, we have to make them, and it has to be very conscious, and it has to be very determined. You have to be very determined to do it,
Yeah.
because otherwise it's not going to happen. And but that being said, I want to point one thing out. That doesn't mean you have to do it yourself, only by yourself.
Right. Can't
I
be
think
an
that's a
island.
very important distinguishment that needs to be made, because especially with this toxic feminine movement. I'm not saying it right. Yes, toxic feminine movement,
Mhm.
where the main message is we can do everything by ourselves.
Mm.
I don't want to.
Oh
Yes,
my
yeah,
gosh, I feel like we need to have a whole hour to talk about the
I
toxic
know.
femininity movement.
I just want to point it out for the sake of this. It has to be intentional. You have to make a decision, but that doesn't mean you're alone through it. You have to do it by yourself. There is so much recollection and healing in relationships with other women, with other men, with other people. That's so much important for me, that was very important to understand, because as a strong woman who can do it all by herself, you tend to be overworked and burn out after a while. So it has to be intentional. You have to make decisions by yourself, and you have to take actionable steps each day, but you can do it within a community. You can
Yeah.
share it with friends. You can be supported in that way.
I think that's a really important distinction to make, and I thank you for putting that in there. And I know that I struggle with this too. I think we were just talking about it last week that we get stuck in this mode of like, I'm the one doing it all, like, I have to carry all of this weight. And then really, I am starting to get a lot of pleasure out of being vulnerable, out of asking for, can I just like have a moment? I need you to hold me emotionally. We have this idea that pleasure is just like what makes me feel good, but like there's juiciness in difficulty because we're not going to avoid contrast. We're not going to avoid things that hurt, but we can bring juiciness there. And when I talk openly with you, talk openly with other sisters that are on this path, like I get more out of that.
Yeah, that's very important to point out.
Okay, so what do you think is like from your perspective as a psychotherapist, what's really happening energetically and psychologically when a woman reclaims her pleasure and sexual kind of autonomy?
Well, one major thing happens on a psychological level, which is integration of parts of yourself that you cut off, that you disowned, that you shamed, that you suppressed. Uh, the important thing about that to know is once you do that with each part of your psyche, because our psyche is fragmented,
Mhm.
and there are all different personalities inside of that have different jobs, let's put it that way. We do that with each of those personalities. They don't go away. They just find another way to be expressed, and it's usually not a pleasant one, nor for psyche, not for the body. So what happens when women claim that, it actually happens in integration of that part of your psyche into the rest. And it's kind of like how would I that when you claim that ownership of that, it's kind of the good word that you usually use when you talk about this is sovereignty. You really have that kind of sovereignty that you communicate. You can tell. I had clients when I would, after the sessions where they would get to that point, you would see them walking like this. Their
With
shoulders would go
regal
down.
nature,
Yes, just, it shows. It really shows in physiology.
right? The
And
body listens to the thought and emotional mind.
yeah, and somehow once that integration happens, and for me, this is very interesting because um, then a good girl, a good mother, and a respected professional can live in coherence.
They don't have to
There,
fight each other.
yes, there is no that stress of suppressing one. You should not be seen, or suppressing the other. They can all live in coherence, and you don't have to compartmentalize anymore. So, what I'm trying to say is they are not mutually exclusive. And when you think about what is the point of, I'm not going to say balance because I don't believe in balance, but in authentic way of living, if you were talking psychologically, the most authentic that you can be the is only equal to the fact of how much you have consensus within those personalities within you.
It sounds like too you're saying, maybe I'm reading in between the lines, that like if you want to bring all of these pieces together in cohesion, like kind of meld back together the full self, there is also a lot of room for like needing to allow yourself to make mistakes. Like you're giving yourself a bigger allowance. Like, oh, I'm a mother and I didn't make her sandwich. Like, it's okay because I'm
Yeah.
also a professional.
Yeah, again, they don't have those personalities don't have to be mutually exclusive. You don't have to suppress one in order for the another one to thrive. They
Are you
can
also
all,
talking about archetypes? Is that another word for like this cohesion of the selves?
well, yes and no. It can be a comparison to it, but what I'm talking about is fragmented selves that live in each and every psyche. And as it transactional analysis, they're divided into adult, parent, and child ego state, but we're not going to get into that. It's too nerdy for now. Nerdy for now. But yeah, there are these protective personalities inside us. There's this child personality inside us. There's this adult. There's this, all different kinds. And among them, there's this sexual person. There's this sensual person. There's this wild women. There's this, but there's her opposite lives there too. This very structured OCD personality, you
Yeah.
know. So they can all live once it gets integrated. They can all live in cohesion. So it's very important to understand that you can live successfully is in a lack of a better word. You can live in the best possible way only to the extent to which your internal personalities are reaching a consensus, are okay with each other.
Okay. So I
Very
guess,
important to cut off any part of us, even the one that we don't feel it uses us, or
yeah, or
just
deserves.
yes, yeah.
Okay. So what are some actionable things that people can take away from this? Because we've talked a lot about shame and how it develops us from such a young age, whether you're a mother and you're going through it yourself, or in how to integrate the self and the need for small moments of pleasure to rewire all of this conditioning. So, what are some suggestions, some like daily steps, some like monthly steps that people can kind of chew on?
Well, I wouldn't go into daily steps because it's very individual
Okay.
for each, one, but I can go generally.
Yeah.
So first of all, you have to notice that you're living without pleasure.
Okay.
That's a first step. You
Absolutely.
have to notice that you are in fight, flight, freeze, or whatever your state is currently, or
That
just
you're
living
starving.
up, just living from neck up in total anxiety, or scheduling, or shutdown, or burnout. First of all, you need to notice that.
Okay.
Once you notice that, then you go into why and how. How do we get there, here, and why? Once you establish that, you can then make, depending on personality adaptation, depending on what period of life you're in, how old are you living alone or with a family member, or depending on all these other things, you create very personalized, structured plan, what it is that you do daily or monthly. Because for me, what can be very pleasurable daily for someone who's completely disembodied their they have this embodied relationship with their body, and they're completely unfamiliar to pleasure. And
Mhm.
not only they're unfamiliar to pleasure, pleasure it's equal fear, for example, which is
Right.
not common at all. You really have to go slow. So, and it can be equal as if, for example, if I were working with you.
Mhm.
So basically, you first have to notice you're living in the dark, and then you need to understand why. And then you need to go through it.
Mhm.
This is the part where people mostly get scared of, because a lot of things are coming up for them in every sense. And usually, when we're talking about pleasure, when woman reclaims her pleasure, and we are in that stage of her therapeutic process, for example, usually what you would see is not her diving into pleasure afterwards. It's going into rage and grief
Yeah.
or
Needs
anger
to
and
be
grief.
like purged or at least seen.
Yes,
It's
yes.
been in the
And why?
shadows.
Yeah, because it's been in shadows and lived in shadows for so long, and now you have to feel that anger. It's usually towards, well, usually it's towards themselves in a sense of how did I let this happen, or how did I let live like this for such a long time? And then there is grief for lost time, for lost pleasure, for
Yeah.
lost opportunity. And for therapists, it's really important to make space for those emotions. And I love TA so much, transactional analysis, because I think, I'm not positive, but I think it's the only psychotherapeutic way that doesn't call these emotions negative.
Mm.
We
Mhm.
don't call them we call them unpleasant. So
Yeah.
there is a division to positive and negative, because negative implies something is bad or wrong with it.
Yeah.
Call them unpleasant, but they are very much so needed.
Mhm.
You're asking me more than happiness for in a sense of expansion, if we're talking about expansion. So once you get to that point, you really need to go through that
Mhm.
and, you know, reemerge into the world with a whole new point of view.
Yeah.
And for if there is anybody thinking, how would I go through it
Right.
now, it's listening to us, I just want to say one thing. 100% of my clients, myself included when I was a client, did not realize just how hard it was living that way
It's harder.
than going through that phase.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's harder 10 times more to living in that state than going through that phase and emerging with another point of view.
So agree. I feel like a lot of the work that I do and you do is encouraging people to touch those shadows so that they can just like smoke, kind of release themselves. Like energy does not want to stay trapped. These imprints, these generational ancestral imprints, do not want to stay trapped in the body. They need us to look at it, examine it, and move it through the body.
Yeah. And it behaves exactly as a child. You don't ignore a child. Oh, they would
So
start
true.
screaming right louder. You look at them, you validate them, you validate their experience, and you offer some support. And that's what we do need to do with ourselves. It seems so easy when you say it like this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
I feel like too, I want to mention that the path of like into pleasure, like you just said, is about all the emotions. You can't experience pleasure when you're trying to selectively numb the uncomfortable emotions. So if you want to be on the path of like daily pleasure, excitement, fun, you also need to make space for the uncomfortable emotions. That's what makes us magnetic is the whole self, right? That
Yeah.
integration.
An ability to hold them all
Yeah.
within ourselves.
Okay, I have one final question for you. What is a message from your Holy Harlot to everyone watching?
You'll get there is the first thing that came up for me. Maybe it's uncomfortable, but you'll get there because point of our living here is to enjoy,
Yes.
among, amongst other things, not to suffer terribly each day of our
Yeah.
life.
Oh
At
my
least
gosh.
I would like to believe believe so. This is Nina saying as a personality, not as a psychotherapist. This is my private opinion, but
Hmm.
yeah, we can get there. We really can, but we need to look at the darkness
Yeah.
and turn on the light.
And you're such an inspiration too, because you are so successful professionally. You also have a beautiful marriage, a beautiful child. You're growing in friendships, and you hold space for those not being perfect all the time. You have it all and you allow it to be what it is, which I admire about you.
Thank you so much. I didn't view it that way until you said it, but thank you. Thank you for pointing out. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah, you're an inspiration. So, is there any other last thing you want to say to the Holy Harlot community before we hop off?
Start working with Mary Lisa as soon as you can.
Thank you.
SAP. Yeah.
Thank you so
Really.
much. Yeah, Nina is in the Holy Harlot program with me. We've been growing a lot together. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Exponentially. Exponentially. Yeah.
thank you so much for being here all the way in Montenegro.
Thank you for inviting me. It was a pleasure, as always.
Okay. All right, Nina. We'll chat soon. And thank you so much for being here.